make sure you grab a microphone and lead us in that pledge. I think so, yeah. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you guys so much. And then we have Mr. Curtis Perry. Mr. Curtis Perry is going to be leading us in invocation tonight.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for giving us this time to meet here and see how town government works. Put your hands on each member who is involved in making the right decisions to perform their duties. Also, I ask you to watch over our police department and officers. They put their lives on the line every day when they put their uniforms on and go out to work. They do this because they want to keep you safe. Watch over the first responders that arrive to any emergency or anything that you have, no matter what. And I ask that all the members that attended tonight and the council members and the mayor get home safe.
Ben, thank you, sir. All right, we've all got the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda tonight? I don't think so. Then I'll entertain a motion to approve it.
I'll make the motion. We'll go ahead and approve the agenda as written.
All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. All right, we'll move quickly through a lot of this stuff. We have a consent agenda, which includes just a simple budget amendment that's just a formality, really. Any of you guys have any questions about consent agenda items? All right, then I'll entertain a motion.
I'll go ahead and make the motion that we approve the agenda, the consent agenda as written.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. That's unanimous. Bert, we got a business item here for a road closure request from Miss Kim East. Is she with us tonight?
Yes, hello. Thank you for giving me a few moments. I just wanted to request, I am Kim East, I'm the associate pastor at Andrew Baptist Church, and we are requesting to close South Hickory Street between MacGyver and Lillington on Sunday afternoon from 1 o'clock to 6 o'clock for a community-wide event, and that is our request. I think you were sent a photo and information on what we were doing.
Yeah. All right. Does anyone have any questions for Miss East? No? All right. I think typically we prefer a little longer lead time, but I think your closure is a pretty low impact to the traffic around town. So if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion for that.
I make a motion we approve the road closure between Lillington and MacIver Streets from 1 to 6 p.m.
All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you. All right, page 2 already. Look at that. All right. The big reason we're here tonight is Mr. Gary Jackson is going to present us some results of his strategic planning data collection and walk us through what we're looking at, Gary, if you don't mind.
My pleasure. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. This is, as you may well know, McGill Associates is an engineering firm. And it's only for special clients that they bring me up to do this kind of management consulting. This is not where we make money. This is where we try to recover our costs and do a service. So, as a lifetime city manager, I also take great pleasure in working with company managers. Show promise and working with very tough situations.
your microphone to work well. This is an important thing. So
Does that work?
yeah.
All right, thanks. I won't have to yell. So let's get started. I'm under the impression that time is of the essence, and that we want to move quickly through this. So I will do that, but the ground rules are this: if you want to stop me at any time, raise your hand. How's that? Would that be fair?
That's fine.
Okay.
And we don't want to rush you. This is important. We have the community and all of us have invested in this. So all
Great.
joking
Great.
aside,
Well, I will say this. I'm going to summarize where we've been, but this is the agenda for tonight, and that's just to review why you do strategic planning, and then give you as the mayor indicated, the results, the data collection. There was quite a bit of that going on. In fact, started before I was engaged under contract. It was a kickoff meeting with the management team because it's very important that they be aligned with this and prepared to execute and implement your priority goals. And they are all on board. And that was a very important first step to build ownership and commitment at the management level with what we were going to go through and how we're going to go through it. So they're with you, the management team, department directors, without exception. I'm going to be covering the employee survey results. You all have got this in your packet, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, I'm not going to belabor it and spend a lot of time, but for those people who have taken the time to come tonight, it'd be helpful to just quickly summarize those.
absolutely, please.
And bring it to the forefront in your memories as well. And then the community forum. How many folks do you think we might have had that attended the community forum? I was asked for an estimate, and I'll just defer to you. How many do you think?
38.
38. Any other guesses? There's not a prize, by the way.
All right.
we could get you.
$1 then.
Okay. It was between 30 and 40, depending. But it was a lot of energy in the room, wouldn't you say? The community forum. So we're going to go through the feedback that we got there, which was very helpful. And then, of course, I met with each of you individually, and you were very kind enough to give me an hour of your time and to share your background and what you saw as the strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats, and where you thought the strategic priorities should be or go. Once we get through that, I believe you're going to want to take a break to get public comment, to add. If there are folks that weren't able to come to the community forum or be
Sure.
in touch with you about this, you're going to give them an opportunity to come to the microphone.
Sure.
So that will be at a breaking point there after doing the mayor and board members' highlights. And then we come back and do the work, which is reviewing what came from your interviews, what trends and patterns exist. And I'll tell you just in advance, there's quite a bit of consensus and not a whole lot of divergence about what the strategic priorities are. There were limited comments about what the suggested goals should be. And you see those pointed out in the PowerPoint presentation I'll go through. But the end result is to come out of this with 5 to 6 strategic priorities and 3 to 4 goals and objectives for each of those. And we'll do that by an interactive process. You'll get we'll poll. We're not going to vote. I'm not going to ask you to debate and prolong the meeting. I've been to enough public meetings that go on, belabor those points. But you surprisingly, well, not entirely, because this is a pattern that I see in a lot of this. You agree on 90% of what should happen in the future in this community. Now, the 10% can get in your way, as you well know. But that's the importance of doing strategic planning. So and then we'll talk about next steps, how to make sure this gets executed. Because for some good reasons, which I'll cover right now, there are right and wrong ways to go about this. Strategic planning is not a new concept. I mean, it goes back to colonial days when our founding fathers, primarily, there were founding mothers too, but they didn't get a lot of credit. But there was a sense, from people that were on the Constitutional Convention, that you could put a constitution in place, you could set a vision for the country, but that wasn't good. That wasn't good enough, right? And you can move the time clock forward. You can go into international conflict in the 20th century and up to the current day time. Peter Drucker is the father of modern management, and you can't hardly pick up a book if you're a Master of Business Administration without reading Peter Drucker. But words to the wise. So these comments do not come from me. I'm not the source of these comments, but I felt it was important to cover what's pretty well known about highly effective elected bodies. And those are the characteristics that highly effective boards see in themselves. This is a series of surveys that they did in South Carolina of municipal bodies just like you. And those that are most effective do these things. They define the results to be achieved, they empower employees to get through them, and they measure. And they continue to serve as the stewards. It's not just a plan that gets on the shelf. It's something that they continue to strive for. It leads into your budget process. It leads into policy decisions, and it goes on like that, okay? Now, that's easier said than done. From the private sector to the nonprofits to the public sector, there are strategic planning efforts that fall short of full execution. And they do that for a variety of reasons. When it comes to municipal organizations, there's some challenges of figuring out, what do you do what people want, or do you do what's needed for the future? How do you decide that? How do you really know what people want? And the reality is, the last two buttons answer the question. To be that effective body, you got to make choices. You can't do everything. You can't be all things to all people. You can't do everything in the near term. There have to be 2, 3, 5-year plans to move things forward toward that ultimate vision. So that's where the strategic plan comes in place. And because, like I said, you all agree on a lot of things. But to some degree, there are going to be differences. The strategic plan becomes your compass, and it becomes something that you can change moving forward. In fact, you should change. You should get quarterly reports on how you're moving forward on your goals, okay? And that's an opportunity to say, well, we really forgot to do this, or the environment changes. In the organization, it changes. The environment in the community changes, right? And so this is intended to be a living document. And a wholesale review should occur on an annual basis. But this is where you start, and this is where you establish goals, and you start measuring your progress, right? Mm-hmm. And make it a living document. So let's talk about the process here in Anger. Pretty much had a very extensive SWOT analysis phase, and that's to your manager's credit, saying, I want to do the best practices. The best practices are to go to build the ownership in the organization, do an employee survey, do the community forum, and to provide for one-on-one time with you all to make sure that you're heard.
Humor me and tell me what SWOT stands for.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. How many of you knew that? All right. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's why I asked.
I went to business school. I figured
I asked the dumb questions so nobody else has to.
I'm not a city manager by heart. I'm more of a business manager. This is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay? So let's talk about what we got from the employees. Now, it may be shocking to people, but to receive 80% favorable rating for those top 5 items, and 5 pride is, are you proud to work for this organization? Would you recommend it as a place as an employer of choice? These are extraordinarily high scores for those top 5 items. I want to emphasize, those are extraordinarily high scores, and they suggest a strong performance-based culture within the organization. It can always be enhanced, and they told me as such. That's what we'll get to next. But you can see at the bottom is compensation. And so this is something that almost every municipal government, in fact, most private employers are dealing with right now because of the inflation period that we're in. It spills over inevitably when it comes to the elected body in municipality into policy direction. Employees feel that the most important thing as a measure of a barometer of how you're making policy is whether or not you're giving them the tools they need, empowering them, and compensating them fairly so they want to retain their co-workers.
Mm-hmm.
They want to see people grow in the organization. So it's not surprising that compensation is on the list. But I can tell you from having done this multiple times in the last 12 months in other places, those are relatively high scores for both 11 and 12.
Mm-hmm.
I'll point out one other thing for the employees that's real important. And I told them I'm going to be gathering their stuff. I'm going to pass it on to you. I'm going to make it really clear as possible, what their sentiments are. 64% under respect, which is the extent to which people feel they're being treated equitably, that they have a place to submit concerns, and that those concerns would be fairly reviewed and followed up on. That means that 2 out of every 5 employees do not rate this good or excellent. That is something to work on, okay? Something to work on. So what do they suggest? They suggest increasing compensation, of course, and they recognize that that should be done on a market basis with data, okay? That's, again, a fairly smart workforce. Instead of demanding it or threatening to organize or whatever the choice may be, it's like we want market-based data to be gathered and fair decisions made as part of the budget process. I heard that over and over again at all levels, okay? They are concerned about turnover. They're concerned about keeping up with the growth that's coming. You know, do we have enough people? It was in public works, it was in police, it was a pretty, and you have vacancies too in key planning department positions. These are really fairly obvious that there'd be a concern. If you were an employee, you'd be concerned about those, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they're telling you. Division and engagement, they want more communication. That goes back to a fairly good score, but 1 out of 3 do not feel they're getting adequate communication. And that's up and down, in and out. They don't know what's going on. Not to the extent that they're communicated with. They feel like there's a lot going on that they're not aware of. That's what I heard regularly. There's a lot going on, but nobody makes an effort to inform us. This leads, I think, I just want to jump ahead for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
This suggests that as much as they appreciated the employee surveys, and I administer them the same way I did with you, not individually, but in work groups, that they really appreciated being heard and having an opportunity to have some voice. And I know that's been conveyed to the town manager, and you'll see here in a little while how listening sessions are important moving forward. And those listening sessions are giving employees an opportunity to express how they feel and what's going well and what's not going well.
And for context,
Yeah.
these interviews were conducted in September, right? The employee interviews?
Late September.
Okay. It was important for me reading your full report to note when these interviews were taken, just for some context of it.
Right.
It's still certainly, that might be 6 months ago, but still valuable information for us to take in. So I just wanted to add some context.
Very good point.
Yeah.
Time frame is always important,
Mm-hmm.
both going forward and looking
Yeah,
back.
but still very valuable insights. So.
Well, it's as a person with a business mentality, I don't invest based upon record. I
Yep.
invest upon fundamentals and technicals and momentum today. So the same with your organization. It's a living, breathing organization. Okay? Excellent point. So vision and empowerment. They supported this process. They're glad it's happening. They want policy direction. They want to know what's expected of them. That's what empowerment is. And they can't do everything. They want to know what the priorities are so they can get to work on it and that it be delegated to them. All right, let's go back to that. Any other questions or thoughts? Any reactions? Let's just, before we move on, do you have any reactions or thought? How do you feel about the employees' responses?
They were conducted October 19th. Sorry. I just went back and looked at my calendar.
October. Okay. So we had the benefit of having more detailed responses and still anonymous, but I think we got everyone's specific response to all of these questions. And I read through all of them, and my reactions were kind of both ways. There were some really strong positives that were really encouraging to see, and there were some weaknesses. I don't want to say negatives, but weaknesses and room for improvement that were a little disheartening, but at the same time, that really helped us know where we need to focus our efforts as far as staffing is concerned. So I appreciate the time you took to interview everyone, because we want to know that, especially in a setting where they felt comfortable and anonymous and could tell us how they really felt about stuff. So while the feelings weren't all great, it was certainly all valuable.
Well, and I want to thank you. I want to add that their supervisors or managers of the department were not in their presence too.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't often get
Mm-hmm.
the honesty that's there.
Yeah.
And I did gather it all anonymously and try to capture.
Mm-hmm.
You have in quotes the full report.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that very much, because I think it's the best possible setting to get real, honest responses. And I feel like we got that, and I appreciate it. So,
excellent.
well, thank you to the staff too, all of them. They're not all here. Some of them are here, but for being honest, so we know how to focus ourselves in that area.
Any surprises in what you saw? No surprises? Anything
This,
in particular stand out? Yeah.
This
Sherelle?
train does not stay on these tracks without the people who gave input in this. So, being in the room with a lot of them on different occasions means I'm not the smartest person in the room, and I appreciate that about all of them. It was super important that we see it, because sometimes we may know it, but seeing it written down was really important for me. So, surprise, maybe not is the word. There's something for me to work towards, for us to work towards as a team. So.
And you're doing it tonight.
Yeah.
Like that vision empowerment. That you're doing one of the most important things that you can do as a leader. I'm going to go back again. I've seen a lot worse response. So I've seen some really critical employee comments
Mm-hmm.
about the elected body. So you should feel good about the degree of hope and optimism there is
Mm-hmm.
in your efforts. And it's been that is, in some cases, in anticipation of the new members coming on board.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So let's talk about the community forum. I asked two questions in the community forum, as you'll recall. One was their favorability rating of services. How do they feel the town is doing in performing those core services? And we also ask for important rankings. And it's different, right? Rating is how you perceive whether it's excellent, good, fair, or poor. And they were asked that question about each of these service areas. And I can tell you, you could probably do 100 organizations and not find 5 scores for public safety that high today. That's extraordinary. I don't mean to point, but that is extraordinary. So hats off to the members of the community seeing intentional efforts to provide public safety and prevention in this community. That's hats off to those folks in uniform, the job they do. The other scores, 1 through 4 are great scores, okay? 5 through 8, this tells you got some things to work on, right? Right? Now, I'm going to ask you what yours might have been surprised about this. I mean, were you expecting these results? I was shocked by
some of them.
some of them.
Some of them are not surprising to us. Transportation, utilities, even land planning to me was not surprising to see that rating given the current growth climate that we're enduring right now. I was surprised to see community engagement rated so low. And I'm hoping that you could give us some insight into why we might see results like that for that one specifically.
That surprised me. I've never seen that score that low. Never. I see it as an opportunity. I saw it in the employee meetings, a desire for more up and down and out communication, and across departments. So I think you're at a threshold. That's what the community engagement thing means. It's a threshold to me that it's time to grow up and be a more sophisticated organization that communicates well with its employees, communicates well with its key stakeholders and residents, and communicates to the general public with its website. And the results of this process give you a really good effort to move into this by publishing your results, posting them, having the quarterly forums, establishing execution goals within departments so that they get feedback on how they're doing, following up on the listening sessions. I, as a city manager, would go out to a department every month and ask the same SWOT class, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, how are we doing, and what suggestions you have. So that concerns me, but I think it's an opportunity to hit a home run. Give me that any day, and as a manager, and I'd turn that around.
It seems like out of all these things, maybe potentially an easy one to work on.
Well, I mean, exactly. You can make inroads pretty quickly, and there are a lot of examples and tools out there, but you have to make a commitment that's not evident now.
Yeah.
Okay? Or at least wasn't in October.
So on the flip side of that,
we did this in January.
On the flip side of that, I was not at all surprised to see our public safety rated so high. Not that it is entirely credited to, but certainly the majority credited to our police department, who is fantastic. So I, for one, was not at all surprised to see such a high score on that one. And Parks and Recreation, my own personal opinion, to see that number, it is a high number, and I think the only reason, and I might be wrong, but from what I have seen, the only reason that might bring it down is because we've been struggling with parking concerns and stuff like that we're all aware of. Yeah. But as far as I'm aware of, our sports programs are great, and we try to keep everything well maintained, and so I was not surprised to see a relatively high score there either.
I want to say something, again, from business experience. And there's a reason why I asked for ratings as well as rankings. And this goes back to basic customer satisfaction surveying, Peter Drucker's school, which is, the classic example you learn in business school is that you can survey and ask people what they want. Again, what they want.
Yeah.
But you have to do an importance ranking. Classic example is McDonald's. This goes back 30 years. When they're up and running, and the biggest complaint that they got in terms of service was what? What do you think people were most dissatisfied 30, 40 years with McDonald's? It's the utensils and the plates and the serving. It's, why can't we get a plate and some fork and spoon? So they asked the next question. That was the thing they were hit upon. It was as they were moving from a counter, people coming up and take out, well, we want to sit down and eat. And so they were basically giving them hamburgers and wrappers and not anything to eat on. And they said, and so that was the major service ranking that went down in the front of the shop. I mean, they ask back of the house, in front of the house kind of questions, if you know what I mean. Then they ask the question, would you be willing to pay 5 cents more for a Big Mac for those things? Guess what they said? So guess what? McDonald's to this day still has not changed that. They've done the packaging so that you can actually eat pancakes off of something that's stable, but
Yeah.
you don't get a plate with your Big Mac and fries, right? So I say that because this is more attuned to where your priorities are, should be. This is asking them, if they were setting the priorities, what would be the priorities? And if you were asking them their priorities, community engagement falls out. See what I mean? It's like, do they want you to invest in it? Mm-hmm. They want you to fix the transportation.
Yeah.
They would like that park expanded.
Right.
Even though it doesn't get a high ranking. Right? So you have to take all this with a grain of salt. You follow me?
Mm-hmm.
So, and interpret it. I mean, that's what you get elected to do, is interpret this. It's data, and that's not a scientific survey. It's not representative entirely of the community. We could hold another community forum on that side of town, remotely, and you might get an entirely different response. In fact, in larger communities, as a manager in larger communities, I would do neighborhood forums, and I would get completely different responses because we're different, right? We have different needs economically, socially, racially, gender-wise. Okay. So this is where you wanted to get public input.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll take a break. And
Do you mind pulling that last chart back up for us?
sure.
We could soak that in a little bit. So this one, the ranking for what was most important to the public we sampled is numbered 1 through 8. So economic development being the priority of our sample group.
Politics 101.
Mhm.
All politics are local. It's the economy,
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm not calling you this, but
No,
it's an old saying, cliche. It's
No.
the economy, stupid.
I'm just kind of clarifying the order here too, because I think I called and asked you why we saw Parks and Recreation at the bottom of this list. So it's good to get some interpretation.
Well, they had a hard time getting there, so I'm complaining about the transportation system.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have steady pressure on my water line, so
Mhm.
I'm going to put that high on my list. And I think even though they're doing a great job, public safety ought to be a top ranking. So
Mhm.
it fell.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it is unimportant.
No.
It just means that there are certainly other things
It's a
that are more important.
It's a snapshot
Yeah.
of what they would do if they were in your shoes.
Mm-hmm.
First. And we're looking for 5 to 6.
Yeah.
So you have opportunities. You and I had this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You have the opportunity to have a standalone park and recreation goal. Some communities have a standalone community engagement goal. Some organizations have any one of these in their 5 or 6 goals.
Mm-hmm.
But what they tend to do, and that's what we'll get into in the drafting phase, is can some of these be combined? And is transportation really yours, or is that a partnership with DOT under infrastructure? Or is it a goal that you do more traffic enforcement under public safety or the police department's
Yeah.
goals? So there are ways to capture what's important within your strategic plan and not miss out on those things that were mentioned up here.
Great.
You definitely want some attention to community engagement,
Mm-hmm.
even though community engagement may not be a standalone goal. It may fall under organizational performance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Just to use an example.
Yeah.
Other thoughts or observations about this? Well, then I'm going to sit down for a minute and
Yeah, that's fine.
see if you have public comment.
So we're going to go a little off what we normally do for a meeting because the purpose of this was, to get input of the public. And I understood some people couldn't necessarily make it to our planning session. So we wanted to kind of open the floor tonight for anyone that wished to come up and speak to any of this or what their own personal priorities were, or anything they feel about it. We wanted to open the floor to anyone. Well, somebody has to come say something. Mike. Mike. I wonder, so we're not going to finalize anything tonight, fully finalize anything, but if people want to, Miss Holly brought up a good point, you could comment. When you guys comment on the videos, we see it. So if you want to drop comments in there either now or later, then we will definitely see it. Otherwise, I guess everyone's pretty happy so far. Well, come on back up then, Gary. Let's keep moving. I'm not going to complain about moving quickly.
Gary, I have a question.
Yes, Ashley.
For the community engagement, does the community have some responsibility in engaging? And I'm not saying that, to step on toes, but we're doing this so that we can hear from them because that's what they want, but then we don't get the participation. So it leaves us playing the guessing game, or taking the results from 30 people out of the entire town. So how do we, without just begging for more participation, to me, that engagement goes both ways.
There are a couple of standard techniques. One is, I don't know. Do you have 311? Do you have a service request system? Okay. This is a natural tool that you can look at. You don't have to use 311. There are other types of SaaS software as a solution. So asking makes a big difference. People are busy, but setting up those kind of forums, other communities to a large extent. For example, last year I did Siler City. They decided their score was low too, and they had two key things they wanted to do. They said we're gonna do a neighborhood meeting in each quadrant of the city. We're gonna take the show on the road. Okay, there are also every town I worked in, we did, I can't remember the name of the company, but there's a national citizen satisfaction survey. And they have, you talk about data, they've captured all the data from every town that they've done the survey in. And they're asking people satisfaction with those same services. And then they do in-depth interviews, and they do it scientifically within a margin of interest. So that's another way, and it's worth the money. It's not that expensive to do that kind of a citizen satisfaction survey. And you'll find interesting things. But you want to do it, you don't want me to do it, you want this national service to do it because they'll have the logarithms and the data. I was always, to give you an example, not to belabor this, but every town I worked in, it was probably my fault, but every time I worked in the street, it scored low, very, very low on street maintenance. That surprise you? Guess what you scored low on, right? Transportation. And what they do is they go on to ask the McDonald's question. Are you willing to have a tax increase to fix your roads? Mm-hmm. Hell no. And they got that back. So they give you the benefit of the same kind of duality that I've got here. The other thing is if you are you using social media? That will grow. That will grow, but it doesn't reach everybody. Mm-hmm. And so again, you get back to Siler City's example, they have the segments of the community demographics that don't use the internet, wouldn't use the survey, wouldn't go to your website, may not even show up for a neighborhood meeting. So what I would need to do, I don't mean to belabor this, but it was real important to me, and I'm glad you asked the question. In Asheville, we had a significant, about a 14% African American population. Couldn't reach them. I went and partnered with a public radio station, which was emceed by an African American man. It was actually the head of the NAACP, and I went there and spoke. And next thing I know, I'm invited to church, several churches on Sunday, to talk about where things are going in the community. And they were some of my most ardent stakeholders. And it wasn't about me. It was about the doors were open to them where they had never seen them open before. So that's a long answer to a short question. But there are a lot of things you can do, and I'm not hitting them all.
Yeah. I think it was a great question. And, you know, in the spirit of that question, I can speak for myself, and I imagine that I'm probably speaking for everyone up here, that community engagement is very important to us. So we're going to be working on ways to expand on that, but we are welcome to suggestions. I mean, we want to connect with the people of Angier. We truly do, and hear what they want, and hear what they have to say, and hear what they're unhappy about or happy about. And so we're going to work on ways to be accessible and communicate with them. But yeah, they got to weigh in too, guys, whoever's watching.
That's an important message, and a value.
Mm-hmm.
I left one other important idea out. We relied upon, in the organizations that I manage, we relied upon advisory groups and worked hard. Why don't we have people applying for the planning zoning? Why don't we have people applying for the park board? So I was always tasked with recruitment of people to be volunteers. And I just came back from a Main Street conference in Goldsboro. They ran that convention center with volunteers. High level of community engagement in Goldsboro. And it's work, you build it over time by creating opportunities. You can have neighborhood cleanup projects and organize those and go out. So I'm just scratching the surface. Okay?
That's fine, we appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to start drafting, right? So I'm going to summarize what I picked up from interviews with you. And if y'all have any questions, you have to be recognized by the mayor. But these are the strengths identified in the meetings with the board members. And the numbers in parentheses represent how many times I heard it. So there are 5 of you, so the overwhelming majority felt Parks and Recreation was strong. But, you know, I was getting 2 and 3 responses, so this is a pretty good indication of what you feel is strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anything left out of here? Any afterthoughts about that you would put up as a strength that maybe didn't get captured here after you think about it? Any questions about what's up here? If not, moving on. Weaknesses identified in interviews with the board. Facility planning, I think the police building was fresh in your mind for someone. A lot of concerns about infrastructure and the water distribution system and working things out with Harnett Water, right? Work to do there. But the rest of the comments about land use planning, traffic, downtown parking shortages kind of fit with what you heard from the community as well, right? So you were reflecting a lot of the unscientific but resounding sentiments in the community in terms of what to work on. The physical appearances sign surprised me, but it caused me to drive around town. There are strengths and weaknesses in neighborhoods, right? And so I have more appreciation for physical appearances and why that would be on the list than I had not knowing the community well. Okay? Opportunities. Anything stand out on that list?
I think we're underway on the building inspection department. So we moved relatively quickly on that from what we met with you to where we are right now.
Good, good. Okay. Challenges and threats. The first item is typically a challenge for elected bodies. But that's why we're here, right? To try to find consensus and put policy in front of politics. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to? These are your responses. So if you want to highlight or emphasize something, or say, "Well, I put that on the list because I feel this way," you have the opportunity to do that. But that's mainly for clarifying
Yeah.
why it made the list. And you'll have another opportunity to do that when we prioritize goals. Okay?
I want to acknowledge that some things that we see as opportunities, we also see as challenges and threats. And so while it may be challenging and threatening, it is still also an opportunity that we're excited to take advantage of. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, a lot of times the answer to the question depends upon the way I ask it, as well as the perspective and the time the person takes. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty? You summed it up pretty well. No, any other thoughts? Okay. I asked about the vision statement, and this is precisely as best as I could recount what you said. I think there's, I think everybody flagged, we're not on the cusp of growth anymore. We may be in the cup rather than on the cusp.
How do you remember how old our vision statement was? It wasn't that old. I think it was.
The comp plan was 2018. So
yeah.
It was with the comp plan.
So relatively recent, but look how much has changed in 6 years. You know.
I can tell the difference from 6 months ago. No, really. I just driving through Fuquay Arena to here and back, I can tell the difference. Yeah.
You giving away where you're from?
I live in
and
Europe.
it ain't around
Not
here.
these parts.
I live in Europe and proud of it. Yeah. I live where my wife lets me live. That and our golden retriever.
Do you have right on hand what our vision statement is? I was just looking for it to. Yeah, I'm on here too. I wanted to read it just so that.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
It is good. It's a good statement. She's looking for it, but it.
Yeah, I'm here.
For the most part,
ways you can go about a couple ways you can go about this, and that is, Mayor, you could assign a committee of the board, or somebody could take a stab at drafting it and distribute it, whatever. But it wasn't. There wasn't. I didn't pick up a sense of urgency, but that this is something that needed to be in your work plan over the coming.
It was a couple years old. It was maybe 6 years old.
It was 2017, and
Was
then
it?
yeah, and then when I got on the board in 2018, it was already compiled, and we just voted on it.
Yeah. But for the most part, it's still it is still the vision for Anchor. Just a couple things had changed. There was a lot of talk of on the cusp of growth and needing to encourage growth. And that's probably the largest change that we've experienced in the last 6-7 years. And I think that's why many of us pointed out the wording cusp of growth, and we are far beyond the cusp of the growth.
We
We
are
are
standing
definitely
in it.
in the thick of it. Yeah. But I mean, really, I think everyone kind of agreed that aside from a little bit of wording to make it up to date, it was still a mostly relevant vision statement for where we are right now, too.
Okay, I'll leave that for you all to decide.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to decide that tonight, but it wasn't a pressing need to rework and reword.
Mm-hmm.
I could have brought you a dozen different vision statements and, or navigated something through your individual comments, but
Yeah.
It didn't seem to rise to the highest priority. Okay, so here are the priorities that were offered. 4 out of 5 for infrastructure, 4 out of 5 for service excellence, 4 out of 5 for economic prosperity. Typically, you see some lone rangers, or I want to deal with housing, or I want to deal with sustainability, or climate change, or I want to do. You understand what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead, this is a pretty tight clustering. So, going from here, what the task would be is to arrive at 5 or 6 strategic priorities. So you wouldn't necessarily, you could leave it at that and then work on the goals. That's what we did with the department heads. So what I did was ask them, okay, if these are affirmed, if the board's comfortable with these, if consensus is around these, so give me some suggested goals, because that's the second part of this process, is putting goals with your priorities. But, and we could word these in ways that are action-oriented.
Sure.
And I can help with that when we bring it back. But the key thing is to arrive at 5 or 6 of these, and then 3 to 4 goals with each.
Yeah.
So we're moving into that. Is everybody comfortable with that?
Yeah. Like you said earlier, when we sat with you there, 5 of us, and you asked us to give you 3. It's so to see these 6, I think that probably most of us up here look at these 6 and agree that they're all priorities. So I don't think we have a lot of outlying stuff.
Well, let's go ahead and ask, but just for the benefit.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. Does everybody share that sentiment? How many are comfortable with these 6 as strategic priorities? Okay.
Is that it? We're done?
That's that. That's half of it. That's half of it. And that's the reason why I'm so much a believer in individual interviews. And I know you agree upon, I started this with 90%, it's the 10% that gets in the way. And so what we're trying to do is get Andrew on the pathway to where you have consensus. Right? So that's great. This is great. So the next phase is for you to look at each of these goals and each of these strategic priorities and settle on, you can have 4 goals underneath of them, but ideally you have 3 to 4. And then you will task the manager and the management team with coming up with specific initiatives and key performance indicators that would move your goals forward. You follow me? So this is an example from Holly Springs where they said economic prosperity and diversity. So everyone customizes to their particular desires and needs. And those were their 3 goals. And if you go to Holly Springs website, you will see for each of these goals the initiatives and measures of accomplishment for each. All right? Which is what your team should bring back to you with your advice and direction after you adopt the strategic priority, the goals. Then you want to see the action plans to move these forward and key performance indicators. And I'm willing to come back with the management team and help them draft that for you, okay? And then that would be the tool that you use to get a quarterly report on, is it progressing or not? That make sense? Okay. So that's their example under economic. I'll give you one more example. Organizational excellence, a similar one that you have as well. And so, no major surprises, right? It's the kind of thing, that's them defining what's important performance to their organization. Every organization is somewhat different. It's a different phase in their evolution or evolve. Or they're evolving or dealing with different problems at different times. So this list may change. And it's probably going to change in Holly Springs over time too. You follow me? Finances may not be a problem, but they just did a bond issue and they got a lot of capital improvement programs and they're watching their tax rate. So I bet it stays. Okay. But that's the kind of thing they've been looking at on an annual basis for some time. All right. So yours, first one up, infrastructure improvement. And the board member concerns were about the water system, stormwater, and traffic management. okay, without setting specific goals, but those are the concerns, right?
Mhm.
And so those are the staff suggestions for goals. And again, like I said, what we're going to do is ask you to pick 3 from this list individually. And then, Mayor, I would like to open it up for discussion at that point. But
Okay.
would like people to vote with their legs and their buttons. Infrastructure improvement is right there.
Okay.
So if you will come up and click 3 buttons by your goals, and then if you see something that's not there that you want to suggest as a goal, we'll come back to get your
Okay.
so
Yeah.
3 buttons.
Does it matter, like, is green like 1, pink 2?
There's the
I think that's just the stickers he got.
3 buttons.
Interactive board.
Yeah, sure. Sure. Hit the board and just, anything's fair game up there. It's just the start of the discussion, right? It's not the final vote. This is not a vote. This is just a poll. Was that saying it takes a village?
That's right.
Okay, everybody? You all can see this, right? So, here's what we got. Clearly, this one should make the list. Support DOT. And this one has 3 as well.
Yeah.
We really don't have an option at this point.
That seems sort of vague to me. What does supporting a project that the state is doing look like for a municipality?
Well, depending, this is my exactly how this is going. In some cases, the alignment matters. In some cases, it's already been determined that's not an issue. It depends upon how far.
They are.
This road is going to be done in like 2 to 4
Yeah.
years.
Right-of-ways already been acquired,
Yeah.
alignment's already determined.
I'll tell you why I picked it is because I want to see it done. And so it was
Well, you shall.
it was a priority to me, and so that's why I selected it.
So, how do y'all react?
I think a lot of us, so I chose the first one, the board suggested goals, because it was kind of more encompassing of some of the other ones in there already. Because it's hard to look at a list like this for any of these items and pick the 3 and feel like you're going to be leaving 3 behind without your dot on it. So it's tricky.
Hard, but if you take off the DOT, you got 4 goals.
Yeah.
Something with that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, that's what we have.
And even the last one that none of us voted for, certainly important to all of us too.
The 4 goals are continue investment in water systems, stormwater, and traffic management, implement flood mitigation study recommendations, complete pedestrian plan and begin implementation. Those would be the 4 goals. Okay? we'll work on crafting those into a draft final plan.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? All right. The next one. Next one, I'll use the microphone. Excellent public service
fine.
organization. Three again. Three again.
This is fun. Will you come to every meeting?
Little interaction. Excellent public service. No. You got to spread your fine self around. Good. So, looks like you arrived at 4 goals again.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are good.
And again, the building inspection one, I think we feel like we're on that track already, so we may not have to list it under this.
It can fall as a measure.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I'm perceiving this is the suggested goal we're ultimately achieving with these other smaller goals. This is the way I'm seeing it. So what we're trying to achieve is being achieved in those other 4 things that we're selecting.
Yeah, well, this is about functionality, culture, responsiveness, technology, innovation, and teamwork. You have pretty good scores here. So I think what you're doing is trying to go to the next level with these goals.
Yeah.
Right?
So we should pick from the bottom to achieve the top part. I'll play your game, Gary, but I got to know the rules.
You're doing fine. You're doing fine. So we're going to do the next one. One of these times it's not going to work, but it would be too easy for that to happen. Okay, economic prosperity. Again, we're moving on. We're going to be done within the next 20 minutes. I promised. Economic prosperity. This is stimulating job opportunities locally, revitalization efforts, investing in neighborhoods. All right, so 3 goals stand out. Clustering, seeking partnerships to drive job creation and revitalization downtown, exploring innovative approaches to enhance economic development, and supporting local businesses. There was one vote, singular vote for neighborhood revitalization, so I think we ought to give whoever voted for that the opportunity to communicate. Where do you think that
was
lands?
me.
Ashley?
If this is where it falls, I think that there are certain areas of town that maybe don't get as much attention as they need. So for me, it's important that we think creatively on how we can kind of revitalize all of Anger and not just parts of it.
Yeah, that's certainly an important one. I think we should include that one because we're picking three, and so we pick the strongest three. That's not to say that any of them are unimportant, but I think that one is important enough that we need to include that one.
What about adding, I'll just throw a suggestion out, how about at the end of seek partnerships to drive job creation and revitalization of downtown, about revitalization of neighborhoods and downtown?
That sounds good.
That work?
You're a monument of efficiency.
Okay. Another one down. Get out of here, Gary. Drop the microphone. This one might be a little bit more challenging. Although you have done work here before. On your website, I just want to point out to you that you have already established goals for community development. Made two studies.
Gotta share, Jim. I've got extras here too. You guys good?
Is it the same thing?
You're falling apart on us, Gary. What's going on here?
The same thing.
Yeah. All right. I got all the extras. All right.
Well, the short of it is that you have some pre-established community development goals, and that isn't synonymous necessarily with responsible management of residential growth, but it does indicate a statement of strategic priority and goals. And so, as part of this process, I would ask you to factor this into your consideration when we go over here to vote, what you've already got here. And the other thing I would suggest is that as you adopt a strategic plan with goals, that this gets replaced. It replaces this. You follow what I'm saying? You're communicating your goals for community development. You can't have these in conflict or competing with strategic planning goals. I'm suggesting that you might want to merge these or know that this goes away. Make sense? Okay. So,
Well, we have an advisory board for which that's accountable. We have a community development advisory board that's responsible to our community development coordinator. So for that to go away, I don't necessarily want to.
well, this would not be to make the board go
Well,
away.
I understand,
This
but
would be
their
maybe
priorities in terms
maybe
of
it would suggest that you have a process of reviewing your community development goals over the coming year. Right? Just like a strategic plan should not be static, these kind of goals should not be static either. I'm suggesting there's work to do.
I don't see the community development and the residential development as the same.
They're
So
not.
right. So and when I think community development's more about engaging with the community that's coming here.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So I don't see it. They don't. We have a planning board for that. So that's where I think they have input in the residential growth and things like that. So explain to me where you see the overlap, if you don't mind.
Responsible residential growth, upgrade the comprehensive plan land uses.
Which is our planning
Yeah.
department.
Yeah, at the same time, it's an expression, but just like your vision statement's there, it's also a statement of what you're trying to accomplish in residential, commercial, industrial, and your amenities as well. So,
I think she's made a good point, and
I'm not trying to argue either.
We're not trying to put you on the
Yeah.
spot because I kind of feel the same way that when we brought up management of residential growth, kind of what's weighing on all of us is the growth that's in some cases tried to be rammed down our throats, and trying to find ways to adjust ordinance or stuff like that So community development is very important, but I kind of understand and agree that for us at least, and what the responsible management of growth means to us and community development are probably two separate issues.
Yeah. Well, I'm totally respectful of that.
Mm-hmm.
I think to some degree in the business of, or in the jargon or the language of city management,
Mm-hmm.
there's economic development and there's community development.
Right. Yeah, we're a small town,
So again, this is me not knowing.
Yeah.
I'm just prompting you to affirm.
No,
and
of
so I'm
course.
glad
I
you're
think you're doing a
clarifying
great
what you're
job because you're drawing it out of us. So
Yeah.
that's what,
These relationships need to be cleared.
Mhm.
They're clear to you and they're clear to staff, and then
Mhm.
you do follow up.
mm-hmm.
Thank you for bringing that up because trying to combine two of those things together, very difficult.
I don't see much
It is
overlap
two
here
jobs.
because for us it is two very different concerns that we have that there might be some overlaps in it, but I think they're significant enough on their own that to us they're separate strategic priorities.
Keep that thought
Okay.
because we've already talked about economic prosperity.
Mm-hmm.
Does any of this need to be reflected in economic prosperity?
I don't know, and I just will speak what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I do that all the time. If we have to map out a limited set of strategic goals, and if it came down to us to say, do we want community development to be an official strategic goal, or do we want responsible management of residential growth to be an official strategic goal, I would choose community development as its own standalone goal, because we all are working towards this on our own in our own capacity. So if it's a matter of prioritizing goals, then I for one would rather see community development as the goal, the overall goal, because a lot of everything you're showing us here is still mostly relevant for right now. And I understand that the point of this is to really chop down what our goals are so we can focus on stuff. That's how I feel about it. I don't know about you guys, but
So,
one way in. All right, then let's find a way to incorporate some stuff. That's what we got to work on.
where does residential growth?
Give us another
management
category for
fall?
that
Does
one.
it fall under economic prosperity or does it fall under community development? Do you want to establish a community development goal, or where does residential growth fall? Where does the park system fall? I really suggest that you don't have 7 priorities.
No, we don't want to have. We don't want to
So-
do that. We
so,
understand the
you know,
goal.
You still got the ability to pull park system in
Yeah.
or something else, or
Just because it's not a labeled priority doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So I
Oh,
don't
that's
think
absolutely
yeah,
true.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
absolutely
yeah.
true.
So I don't think that putting a label on it per se means that Chrissy's going to stop doing what she's doing because Lord knows we need her. So I don't think that. I mean, not that it's not a priority. That's why it's tough for me to narrow this down to such a small pool because we have a lot of priorities. So it's just what's the most important priority. So, yeah. I don't want to change it, and I don't want to change it. So
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm
trying to look at this and see how we could combine one of these two with something else we've already got. Okay, how about public safety? Where do you think that ranks on as a need for a?
you want to come back to this?
Yeah, I'm wondering why don't we skip this one for now and see what the other ones look like?
Yeah.
And then maybe that'll help us figure out what to do with.
I think acknowledging that our community development is a broad stroke at community and economic development is worth acknowledging, but I think that is already known in the organization. So, yeah, I don't know that we need necessary. I think we may be jumping the gun trying to change something that may already be being worked. Yeah, yeah.
That still leaves you with, what do you want to elevate? Residential growth or community development? Or do you want to consider residential growth management as part of community development?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could do this the reverse way. I'm just brainstorming with you. You could do this the reverse way. Instead of creating a new residential growth goal, you could have a community development goal with residential. You add this to the community development agenda. That way it stands as a specific goal under.
If we could do this, we wouldn't need you, Gary. So thank you for bearing with us.
This is good. It's good discussion. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and also development.
What if we do community and economic development? There's a lot of common themes. I wonder if we could combine economic and community development into one goal. Can we do that?
It's pretty common.
It might be an easier way to keep the priorities there, but somewhat
Sends a message that
cohesive.
it's a priority to manage
Yeah.
both residential and commercial
Yeah.
development, right? That
Well,
you
I
want
think
a mix of
was-
that.
I think maybe we were suggesting, and I might be wrong, Ashley, because you brought it up. I think maybe we're suggesting to add our community development goals, combine the community development goals with economic prosperity goals, narrow that down maybe, and then keep the residential growth one.
The goals of community development: attract new businesses and support new development, market and promote of Andrew businesses, promote
Yeah.
town events and showcasing the downtown area, and recommend activities and projects for both economic and community development. I would tell you that
It's
they're pretty much already acknowledged in what we selected, aside from the events.
yeah. So then, in the interest
If
of
you move, if I may,
yeah, please.
if you just move these under community and economic development, because these are community
Yeah.
and economic development, is what
Yeah,
you're saying, right?
I think that's if we could combine
If you-
these,
if
then
you-
we can keep the residential as a priority still, and not give too many goals.
Under you combine economic prosperity
We'll put
with community development.
yes,
I got you.
yes.
Economic and community prosperity. Let me turn my mic off.
Gary's going to help us come up with the
what
words.
I'm hearing is that you want economic and community development, however it's worded,
Yeah,
as the
they seem to fit hand in hand,
right.
and then we could keep.
And then you
To
try to
me-
move these in here. So the question is, are these captured on this list? And you were saying they are.
Yeah, I think so.
I think
we
they already
acknowledge
are.
support local businesses as one.
Mhm.
Innovative approach, or the revitalization of downtown and neighborhoods.
And innovative
Yeah.
approaches. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think it
This
might
is
be
more
pretty well
fun than
covered.
consensus for me. I don't know if you realize
Yeah.
this, but you are being creative and you're coming up with a better idea.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, this is good. You are a fantastic help, but this is
I'm
we all live in
facilitating.
this
It's your
town,
product.
so
And
yeah.
to me, the community development plays into the community engagement, to which we all hold very important. And I think that's why it's important for it to be acknowledged, just because all of us take very high consideration in the community as a whole, and being engaged and having opportunities to support local businesses and be engaged with what all we have to offer here.
Right. And you don't want to lose this.
Right.
So that's why I brought it
Right.
up.
Mm-hmm.
Is,
Thank you.
were you superseding this?
Mm-hmm.
No. You're reinforcing this.
Yeah.
So I got it. Everybody
All right.
good?
So we're going to put this with that, and we're going to work
And
on
it's
the
gonna come back-
residential
It's going
stuff.
to come back in draft form, and I'm going to
Yeah.
merge you'll see more of this language than that language, but I'll make sure that we cover the things that you put buttons on.
Thank you.
Got it?
Yeah. Teamwork.
Right. Yay, team. Team Andrew. All right, so we're on this. We wanted to keep this, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
so you've got 3 goals there. Does anything else come to mind that's important in terms of managing residential growth?
I might add the word ordinances to the second one because that is some
Oh,
way that we
yeah.
have control over that, you know? Because even that's something that, you know, that I'm learning too. When we met with you, it was early in my career, at least. And while this is something I wanted to do, I didn't fully understand the ways we could. So ordinances was one that I learned would give us some more control over stuff like that.
Right. Okay. Initiate a study of housing market. Do you know where you are? In terms of housing, do you know where do you know, this is the SWOT analysis.
Yeah.
Housing.
Yeah.
You follow me? You know, what's strong about your market, what's weak about your market, what are the opportunities in your market, and what are the opportunities to move forward? And this would be something, you don't have the staff to do it.
Yeah, and
This
it
would
might
be
it might be out of our
third
control
party.
anyway. Because something
And so
like that is
a
market
lot of
driven.
towns of all sizes are doing housing studies
Mm-hmm.
to find out, you know, they'd start with what are your goals,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's master planning. It's you know, what are the existing current conditions, what are we experiencing, what are the trends,
Mm-hmm.
what are the ideals that are laid out in your comp plan, and then devising from best practices what customized solutions would they suggest to you.
Right. So a study like this, the intent would be to help us perhaps work on the comprehensive plan.
Right, either fill you know, if you want to look at it as life cycle housing,
Yeah.
do you have housing for people when they go away to college and come back and want to work here? Do you have housing for them? Do you have
get 'em a job.
housing for people 55 plus who might want to stay here? And do you have apartments versus
Yeah.
ownership opportunities, and where are they located? And do you have dynamic around your downtown, or is it all spreading out? This is
Yeah.
what a housing study would do for you.
I think I would like an asterisk on that just because I would want to know like what the cost of something like that would be and kind of how what that process looks like before I would put
Yeah.
a hard set
Put,
goal
put a
for
star
that.
on it and then put a question mark on it for me because the reservations that I have with including this as one of our goals is that while it might give us information that we would like to know, my concern is that the ability to do anything with that information would be out of our control outside of zonings, which we already know right now even have very little meaning to the kind of stuff that is trying to be built here. Right. So I would hesitate maybe to task it as a goal for us when it seems to me like something that is maybe not actionable on our part to work towards or not as easily actionable. And I might be wrong. I'm new with this guy, so if anyone has got any input or tell me
Well,
I'm wrong,
you
I'm
could-
welcome to hear it.
You could fall way short of committing yourself to an unestimated consultant. So you could say something like review best practices for housing policy and identify next steps. Something
fine.
along that line. I mean, is it something that you
Yeah.
want to learn more about
Yeah. It's kind of like
without? I
my
mean,
reservation is like if I make a promise to my kids, if I make a promise to anyone, if I make a promise, my intent is to follow through
Yeah.
and to get that promise done. And so I am considering these things to be promises, that things that we want to do that. We are committed to working on these things. And it seems like I feel uncomfortable making a promise that I'm not sure I can do anything about. So we'd have to word it in a way that gave us a goal that we felt like we could achieve. I don't know if that makes sense.
Right. I get you.
I hope that makes sense.
No, it does.
Sorry. Thinking creatively for affordable housing options that are actually affordable for
Yeah, the
first
word
responders
affordable.
and teachers and a lot of the people that I work with.
I mean, we just had a bunch of townhomes brought to us that were going to start in the 300s, and that surprised me, at least to see. I imagine that something like a townhome would be the most affordable housing we would see in our town, and to see it starting in the low 300s was surprising, or maybe disappointing. I guess that's the times we're in. It's also kind of why I hesitate to know that we could do anything about.
I kind of feel like our hands are tied when it comes, other than the zoning and.
So we get where you're going with that one, and we are interested to have that information, but we are hesitant to make a promise that we feel unable to follow through on, maybe on
Let
that
me
one.
ask a follow-up question. Ashley, were you looking, and I follow your point about, I don't want to make a goal to do consultants.
I'm just a very simple man. I like to make goals, but then I want to meet them.
I get that. I'm not making a living doing consulting, but this is what I do because I still enjoy doing it, helping shape communities. But I sense that you do want to review best practices for housing policy or explore creative options to expand home ownership and rental in town. What's the outcome? I mean, this is a pathway to an outcome.
I mean, ideally, I would love to have people become homeowners if that's what they want, and I think it's a real struggle for a lot of people right now. I just don't really have the solution as to how
And I don't
we
know
can do
that
that,
we have
unless
control.
it's things that where we were mixed use, where there's 2-bedroom condos that are for sale above retail. But that is, unless they bring it to us, I feel like
It's hard for us to drive that.
we can't just decide that that's what we are going to do. And
I'm going to go stronger than I normally would go.
Be strong on us, Gary.
I think replacing this with explore creative options to expand housing ownership.
I like that. I sleep at bed.
I mean,
I'll sleep at night.
the exploration can be, what have other communities in the research triangle done in this regard? Just doing best practices, benchmarking.
Mhm.
That's what I would do as managers, do a benchmarking of what did Holly Springs do, what did Apex do, what did Oxford do, what did Gardner do, and are there any lessons there that suggest what our next steps would be? And then
They got
your
economic
goal
development.
next year could be different. It could be something more concrete.
Why it was really important for me to keep this goal were the first two. I think it's really important that we review our comp plan and what it looks like, because I would hate to see us give away all of our land opportunities to residential development only. And for us to review what our goals are and how they align with that comp plan and how we're achieving that. So while we've created an excellent bedroom community here in Anger, we haven't really set ourselves up to offer, like you said, jobs and things like that. So, land doesn't only have one use. It does here right now, but hopefully we can put together a plan that reflects something differently. So that's why it was really important for me. It was really those first two.
A lot of downtown Main Street plans get at this goal too. So, but what I'm hearing you say is keep the first two bullets and rewrite the third bullet. Do we need to do buttons? No buttons. We're good on that one. All right. The last one is, nope, we got two more. We got park system and public safety. So, any questions about the park list, or do you want to go at it with your buttons?
I don't know that we need to go with the buttons. You guys could decide. But the second one, well, the second one is checked off.
Oh, so we can take that off?
We've been working, Gary. You haven't been here, but we are rocking and rolling. That's cheating.
No. It just means we're taking action with what we say. Gary's catching up.
How about
Okay.
this? How about this? Establish an effective Parks and Recreation Board. Then you can just review its effectiveness at the end of the year.
Giving us a measurable goal. You should do this for a living, Gary.
I retired from this.
But you can't get enough. You're still here dealing with us.
I'm happy to be. I really am. This is an honor. Okay, so we're good on that one?
Yeah, I think this one's good.
I like the fee study. You'd be surprised what you find. And what you're going to need to decide what's cost recoverable and what's not and make a decision. Because some things you don't want to price out of people's range. All right, so public safety. Now, I have to commend your chief. I couldn't get all his goals on one piece of paper, so I gave him an opportunity to tell me if I left anything out or he wanted to revise anything, and I didn't get anything back.
He does have goals,
but he has,
which is a positive.
He's on top of this and was probably the most responsive of the management team.
Okay.
So I appreciate that. I don't know if that makes your job easier or not. You have any questions for the chief about these goals, or do you see if any of them could be combined, or do you want to just kind of see? Do you have any questions about it first before you potentially do buttons?
No, so I'm wondering if it
You
would.
can have 5 goals if you want 5 goals.
I'm wondering if it would be all right to include safety equipment in the first one, to combine it with training.
Okay.
I feel like some of these could be combined in overall theme, training and equipment. I think we could put those together pretty easily. Produce a monthly newsletter. I'm excited to see that. Who's going to do that? You or David?
So we're moving traffic enforcement training up into the first bullet?
I think it was the officer safety equipment.
Oh,
Update and upgrade.
thanks.
Seems easy enough to include with training.
Yep. Then you're at 4 goals. Does that capture what you're trying to accomplish?
I think that's
Think
good.
so?
Yeah.
5
Don't
minutes
look at
over.
the clock. You're great.
I'm
You're
5
fine.
minutes over.
That's all right. It's our fault.
Wait a minute. We started at 6:30.
We're running.
He started 2 minutes late.
He's
You're
gonna-
good.
This might be the last one of these you do when you're done with us. So
I've got to. Let's recap next steps. So you're gonna. I'm gonna draft these up. It's not gonna be the final product, but it would be these goals, and that's all. Forget all the other information, but it would be these 6 strategic priorities and the goals that came out of this meeting tonight. You would have that attached to an agenda item, which would be to review and consider adoption. And you take public comment at that time again. And then you'd vote on it. Okay? Once you vote on it, then Elizabeth would notify me, and somebody would provide some nice pictures. I've got a lot of pictures from other communities, but I don't have many Andrew photos. So
we
if
could
you've
probably
got
rustle some
photos-
up for you.
These shouldn't be of citizenry, but they're images of buildings and places, and it could be of staff celebrations, that kind of thing. And we would fold those into it. It'd be a nice layout and product. But I would do that after you all have adopted the plan. The other thing which I'm willing to do, and not for additional fee, is to come back with the town manager and department heads and flesh out those initiatives and key performance indicators that go with each goal. So you'll have that, which will serve as a dashboard for quarterly updates. The other thing that I would suggest, the next thing, I'm going to come back to budget. Align management performance evaluations. We haven't discussed this, but just so you can tell this isn't, I'm not playing favorites here, but there are stock performance evaluations, which evaluate core competencies and roles and responsibilities. They're from financial management to community engagement to board relations to policy implementation and those kinds of things. The best practice in communities that have strategic planning are to include these goals as a part of it. So you do the evaluation, exceptional, good, fair, needs improvement for those core competencies or attributes. But then you would also have in the annual review for the manager review, how do we do on community and economic development? How do we do on strategic planning? And I've got a format, if you're interested in looking at that. I think this is something that should be a mutually agreeable thing, but I can show you that the town of Fletcher, North Carolina, has a very well laid out format where you see 6 or 8 attributes measured, what rating that you would individually give to them, to the manager, and then you see the goals and how was that done? So you have this. When I was manager in Asheville, I would get like a 50%. They would apply 50% to the attributes and 50% to whether or not goals were moving. And there's a reason for that. Anybody familiar with this managing complex change model? Okay, here's how it works. Significant change occurs if you have vision, if you have skills, you have motivation, and that can be, I can substitute incentives for that, right? Resources behind it, and an action plan, all right? If you don't have the vision, which is a little bit of what you might use to describe your current situation, is you have confusion about what your priorities are, what your strategic goals are. What you're trying to accomplish. That's confusion. If you have all the other pieces there, but you lack skills and development, I mean, this is the reason why we start with the management team kickoff. This is the reason why the employees are involved. This is why they need to be informed and they need to have the opportunity to make suggestions, because you need to have those folks behind this plan. If you don't have if the skills are missing, if people aren't trained, you're going to have anxiety and stress, and you're going to have paralysis. I've seen it. Without the incentives, you might necessarily have everybody on board. Some people need to be motivated by incentives. And I don't mean negative ones. I mean positive ones. It's like, what's in it for me? I've got family commitments. I like my job. I like doing my job. Why do I have to step out? Well, if the anticipation is evolution, creativity, and change and organizational development, you need to be clear about that, or you're not going to get it. You're not going to get it. So without resources, you can have everything else in place. What happens if you don't? If you just said, our goal is to do this study, you would have frustration, because without the resources, so that's why your point was spot on. These need to be achievable goals. And so that's what we'll work on if you ask me to come back and work with the staff and develop the action items that go with this. The action, without the action plan, some things go and some things don't. It's called false starts. This makes sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
So this is like keeping in mind, don't put this on the shelf. And this is why we talked about listening and employee engagement programs and establishing these goals and keeping everybody informed so that there's all this in place. Because like I said at the outset, there are reasons why some strategic plans don't get well executed. And there's an answer to each of those. In some cases, a couple of these things can be missing, okay? Wherever I worked, we were fairly successful in moving things forward because we adhered to this. I didn't just put it on a shelf. I evaluated my department heads on what they're contributing to this. And that's an important first message, which is, you know, Chief, it's great. Where'd he go? All right, so he's got really good goals for his department, knows where he wants to go, and knows how he can contribute. You know, you need that level of alignment. The strategic plan needs to cascade. You follow me? And it's quite possible to do that. And the valuable thing here, the first time we met, Mayor, I said the planning is more important than the plan because you're sending a message. You're sending a message that you're setting the direction where you want to go. You're cognizant of weaknesses, challenges, and opportunities, but you're going to put some direction in place so that the ends are understood, and then you can task the staff with coming up with the means. Does that make sense? So it's what you're going through is reinforcing the roles and responsibilities of policymakers and administration. You can't do this any better than this. So my hat's off to you, and I really think you're going to do great because I can sense some momentum. Yeah, I'm Johnny, late on the scene, been in this stratosphere for 6 months, but I can sense some momentum, and your next step would be that budget process. And it's important. One of the things, and I don't want to suggest too many changes, just because of my management style, but if there was ever any fiscal impact to an item that's going on the agenda, I mean even independent of the budget process, every agenda item had fiscal impact. It may even have legal opinion on it, okay? And so I don't know, I haven't looked at your agenda items in those materials, but having fiscal notes for anything that's brought some fiscal impact paragraph is something that's real important for two reasons. One, you want to make sure the resources are there like we talked about before, but you also don't want to commit resources that are obligated elsewhere.
The staff really does a good job on our agenda items to include financial impact as a line item, even if it's not applicable, the line item is still there. So they're doing a really good job.
Excellent.
With letting us know that our decisions have not just financial, but all kinds of impact. So they're really helping us between the town manager and finance staff to make fully aware decisions about things.
Well, that explains to me why financial management didn't appear under excellent public service, because you're confident in with the financial management that you see. That's good news. That's job number one under the charter for the town manager. Okay, so that's the rest of the process. I avoided any of the self-serving, here's my name, here's the corporate logo, here's my number, here's my email address, thanks for the opportunity, but thanks for the opportunity.
That's fine. You're just Gary to me.
Good.
So as long as you're all right with that.
I'm awesome with that.
Yeah.
I'm here for you.
I'm glad you came, and I enjoyed, when we did our interview, it was probably 2 hours, and that might have been my fault. I needed some guidance, and you had to draw it out of me at the beginning. But once I learned your rules, Gary, I played your game. And thank you for putting this is important to us, and that might have gotten clear there near the end. We kind of skated through the first part, but when something became important to us, thank you for putting up with us while we, in real time, try to work through how to make that work out. Sometimes challenging, especially on the spot, to say, well, what should we do with this? But thank you for bearing with us. And thank you for the department heads that were here, really with not much to do. I'm glad you're here. And town staff, and Dan, your job's pretty boring tonight. I'm sorry. But, and to the members of the public that came, I just wanted to say that because once we go to closing stuff, people run out of here. So I wanted them to hear that.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Thanks again. So I'm done with this phase, with the drafting phase, and I'm at your disposal when you want to set up that department head meeting, and I'll get you a summary of this probably by the end of the week. Okay? Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. All right. Well, if anyone would like to say anything else before we adjourn, talk about that. You usually have something inspiring to add. Not tonight. All right, then. I suppose I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Thank you.